this country with distinction and deserves every opportunity to defend himself. And the Liberals have done everything they can to deny this right. The Prime Minister has refused to release documents needed for the defence case. And now we know that code names were being used to evade access to information laws within the ministry. And today now we've learned, Mr. Speaker, that the former president of the Treasury Board has withheld personal emails from Mr. Norman's lawyers. My question for the Prime Minister is, when did the Prime Minister know that the minister was withholding personal emails in this case?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course, it would be inappropriate to comment on this matter before the court. The Sub Judice Convention indicates that MPs should refrain from discussing ongoing legal proceedings. Courts are dealing with the handling of evidence, and we respect the judicial independence and the House of Commons rules.
The honourable member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker, a minister of this Prime Minister's government is withholding personal emails from the lawyers of Mark Norman. In October, the former minister said that the only contact he had with Irving was being copied on a letter, but there would appear to be copious documents that are relevant, and as a result, he's lawyered up to try to work his way out of this cover-up. This is all very concerning, and it lies at the feet of this Prime Minister. So once again, when did the Prime Minister learn that his minister was withholding personal documents relevant to the Mark Norman case?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, these are matters before the court right now. The court is engaged in it, and we know that in Canada, the independence of our judicial system is something that must be a bedrock of our society and indeed of our functioning as a society and as a parliament. We respect the independence of those courts. We will allow the courts to do the job they need to do.
The honourable member for Milton.
Here, it's the end of the month, and in the normal world, families are taking a look at their personal budgets and trying to figure out how they're going to balance their own, because they know, unlike the Prime Minister, that budgets don't balance themselves. And they also know that if they're short this month, they just can't borrow their way out of debt, unlike the Prime Minister, who thinks that the country can. And finally, Canadians know that they will be the ones paying for the mistakes of this government and this Prime Minister. So, at the very least, Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve a clear answer before the election. Will the Prime Minister impose massive tax hikes on these Canadian citizens?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, from the very beginning, our plan has been to lower taxes for the middle class and raise them on the wealthiest 1%. That has been an issue for the Conservatives, because we know that they prefer to give tax breaks and advantages to the wealthiest. Well, unfortunately, that approach for 10 years under Stephen Harper didn't work to create any more than anemic growth. And what we've been able to do by investing in Canadians, investing in their communities, is give the lowest unemployment rates in 40 years and see Canadians create 800,000 new jobs. We're going to continue to invest in our communities because our plan is working to grow the economy for the middle class and those working hard to join.
Honourable member for Richmond-Athabasca.
Monsieur le Président, grâce à la saine
Mr. Speaker,
gestion des finances
thanks
publiques
to
de
the former
l'ancien gouvernement
Conservative government's
conservateur,
excellent
ce
financial
gouvernement a
stewardship,
hérité
this
d'un
government
budget
inherited a
équilibré.
balanced budget.
Le constat aujourd'hui est
Today,
que 80%
of Canadian families are paying more taxes because of the Prime Minister's out-of-control spending. And yet, in the last election campaign, he swore he would balance the budget before the end of the first term. So my question is simple. Will the Prime Minister table a plan to balance the budget without any further tax hikes on Canadian taxpayers? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the plan that we presented to Canadians in 2015 involved investing in Canadians, investing in communities, and creating economic growth. This is after 10 years of failure under the Harper Conservatives. We created a strong and growing economy. Canadians created 800,000 new jobs in the last 3 years, and we continue to see the lowest unemployment rates in decades. We will continue to invest in Canadians to create more prosperity for the middle class and those working hard to join it. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, here's the reality. This government spends, spends, and spends on the backs of our children and grandchildren. Who will have to pay for that? Who will have to pay for the failures, mistakes, and the out-of-control spending of the Prime Minister? Well, it's the workers, business owners, and parents of Canada. So I'll repeat my question to the Prime Minister. Yes or no? Will he table a plan to balance the budget without increasing taxes on Canadians? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we did not increase taxes and we will not increase taxes on Canadians. On the contrary, we are the ones who lowered taxes for the middle class. We did so by asking the wealthiest Canadians to pay a little more tax. That's what shocks Conservatives. Because from the very beginning, they have been promoting economic growth by giving more benefits and advantages to the wealthiest in order to create economic growth. But that doesn't work, Mr. Speaker. Trickle-down economics doesn't work in Canada or elsewhere, and that's what they don't understand. We created economic growth by investing in the middle class, and we will continue to do so.
Our new Westminster Burnaby.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister misled Parliament and all Canadians when he said in this House that he has, and I quote, already helped over 1 million Canadians find affordable housing. We checked the CMHC record, and it says only 14,703 new units have been or are even being built. So this government gave away $14 billion in corporate tax write-offs in the mini-budget, but has only built a few new units of housing. Why is the Prime Minister deliberately misstating the facts? When will the government find new affordable housing for Canadians?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve housing that is safe, affordable, and accessible. That is why we have made unprecedented investments in housing across this country since day one, including with our national housing strategy. We have already helped more than almost 1 million Canadians access homes. Our plan is for stable housing and financing now and for the next decade. We know that quality of life, the better opportunities for kids, for families, for everyone relies on housing. That's why we're investing in a national housing strategy.
For New Westminster Burnaby.
Let's be clear, doing routine repairs and maintenance is not finding new housing for Canadians. And that answer shows appalling disrespect for Canadians in Burnaby and everywhere else that are suffering through the worst housing crisis we've ever had. Canadian families are struggling under the worst family debt crisis in our history and in all the industrialized world. 46% of Canadians are $200 away from financial insolvency in any given month. Why doesn't this government build affordable housing? Why doesn't this Prime Minister start to care as much about Canadians as he does about Bay Street billionaires?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would suggest that the NDP be careful about maligning the idea of repairing or refurbishing existing housing stocks. Far too many Canadians live in housing that is unacceptable, and the investments we've made that have helped rebuild, refurbish, renovate, improve housing for Canadians right across this country is making a real difference. That is part of the money we are flowing to communities, to Canadians, to make sure they have safe and affordable places to live. Yes, Mr. Speaker, there's much more work to do. But, Mr. Speaker, we are doing it with unprecedented investments in housing.